Chapter 15-17. The sound of clashing swords echoed in the forest. Branches were cut, dirt flew into the air, dust clouds formed, and the occasional drops of blood were spilled. Multiple figures blurred as they fought ferociously, if the damage to the forest was any indicator. However, it was clear that one side obviously held the advantage. A red-haired ogre clashed with a clothed hobgoblin, quickly deflecting the hobgoblin's sword before forcing him back. A tempest wolf with a golden horn and white and dark bluish fur came from behind, jaws wide open poised to bite, only to be quickly knocked aside by a blue-haired ogre. Nearby, a certain short and perverted hobgoblin was screaming in agony, as he laid on the ground, a shallow wound on his chest. In front of him stood an old ogre with a white coat, who proceeded to sheath his sword. Rimuru, seeing the entire scene with universal perception, quickly put on his copy of Shizu's mask after taking it out from his imaginary space. He rushed to the battlefield, and landed in front of Gobda, causing a small crater to form beneath his feet. His platinum blue hair breezing in the wind, he gazed at the ogres in front of him. The fighting had paused the moment he arrived. In front of him, grouped up together, were the ogres that would eventually become his comrades in arms. Rigyur, Ranga, to me. The clothed hobgoblin, Rigyur, and the direwolf, Ranga, immediately fell back to their master. Rimuru immediately tossed them healing potions, healing them instantly. "Hey, Lord Rimuru, don't I get one too?" asked Gobda, still lying on the ground. Rimuru proceeded to ignore him. "Sheesh, he makes such a big deal out of a shallow wound, and this will benefit his growth so. Lord Rimuru, please, quote. Unbeknownst to Gobda, those words hit Rimuru hard. His trauma and pain related to the loss of his family made him want to protect them, but at the same time he wished for them to grow stronger. As such, he was now debating on whether to give in to Gobda's wishes or to just let him moan in pain for a bit, thus increasing his pain resistance. "Goddamn it, Gobda!" Rimuru finally gave in and tossed him a healing potion. "Thank you so much, Su Tilda," said Gobda, with tears in his eyes. Now fully ignoring the fool, Rimuru eyed the ogres, at least where they were previously. Notice, the ogres are now moving to engage master. Okay, this is not how I expected things to go. But at least I don't have to act as naive as before. Rimuru proceeded to duck as a mace swung in his direction, courtesy of the purple-haired and skinned ogre. He then retreated back as the red-haired ogre jumped over his companion, attempting to bisect Rimuru in half. A wall of blue flames suddenly appeared behind Rimuru, seemingly cutting off his retreat. The red-haired ogre pressed forward, swinging his sword towards Rimuru's neck, only to be met with stiff resistance. Rimuru had drawn a tachi from his imaginary space and had blocked the strike. A feint to the left caused the ogre to back away, before a thrust towards the ogre's neck forced the blue-haired one to intervene. As two thin swords met Rimuru's tachi, both the mace-wielding woman and the red-haired ogre pushed, flanking Rimuru on both sides. Both swung as one, only to miss and nearly hit each other. Ahead of them only lay the now uninjured hobgoblins and a lone direwolf. Turning around, they were met with the sight of their unconscious blue-haired companion gently sliding down the base of a tree. Their eyes looked slightly upwards, noticing the small crater in said tree. Slowly, they realized what had happened. Instead of retreating, their opponent had pushed forwards, overpowering the blue-haired ogre and shoving him into the tree. Rimuru was forced to yet again avoid a strike, this time from the white-haired master. Instead of ducking or dashing in a direction, he simply leaned back under the strike, transitioning into a backwards roll. The roll ended when he launched both of his feet out, kicking the large hammer-wielding one in the stomach, sending him into some rocks nearby, knocking him out as well. Alright, time to end this, thought Rimuru. Using sticky steel thread, he immediately tied the purple-haired ogre to a tree. He then blocked a blue fireball coming from the pink-haired one using body armor. Using universal perception, he noticed once again the white-haired master attempting to sneak up on him, only to send a cloud of paralysis breath in that direction. However, it was avoided, and the three remaining ogres grouped together. As expected of Hekuro, I actually put some effort into that attack, thought Rimuru. But, why are they so aggressive this time? I mean, they did not even give me a chance to talk. Eyeing the now frustrated ogres, he asked them a single question. "If I may ask, why did you guys attack me and my subordinates?" Rimuru already knew the answer, but he wanted to understand what made them act so differently. "Wouldn't you already know that, you evil Majin?" yelled the red-haired one, moving forward as if enraged. He was stopped by the white-haired one, with a hand placed on his shoulder. "Enough. You cannot be reckless. The Majin before us has used sticky steel thread belonging to the black spider, body armor belonging to the Armorsaurus, and paralysis breath belonging to the giant centipede. We don't know how many more skills he has hidden in his arsenal. He also effortlessly saw through me each time I hid my presence. It is not a feat that many in this forest can do. Rimuru interrupted the conversation again. I actually don't know what you guys are talking about. Can you please express? He was answered with an orange and red fireball to the face. Shut up, you evil Majin. Ogre Flame, why is Benimaru so angry? Did something happen? Standing still in the epicenter of the flame tornado, Rimuru pondered on the current situation. He could take the same course of action as last time, but he did not know if there were any unknown circumstances that could cause things to go awry. Seal, what do you think? Master, it is fine to proceed as planned. Very well. Calmly walking out of the tornado of fire, he took off the mask, and allowed a minuscule portion of his true aura to reveal itself. That alone caused the remaining 3 ogres, as well as the subordinates behind him, to shake in fear and awe. His aura even dissipated both the red flames of the red-haired ogre, as well as the blue flames of the pink-haired one. Seal, meanwhile, had already started to run interference, preventing any others from sensing even the slight amount of aura. Quickly forming a small tornado of black flames in his hand, Rimuru then raised it above his head, before willing the flame to swell in size. The flame followed his orders, growing exponentially, its heat causing the moisture in the air to vaporize. The flame even blocked the sunlight from reaching the fight, darkening the sky above. So, will you surrender yet? Rimuru asked with a calm tone. He expected the ogres to refuse, so he then quickly launched several strikes of black lightning around the general area, destroying rocks and uprooting trees, before waiting for their answer. Young master, started the white-haired ogre. Enough, answered the red-haired one. It's always the same, isn't it? The strong will always destroy or bully the weak, that is why I need to get stronger, to avenge them. Asterisk 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 asterisk. A burning village, a dark night sky, lit with the flames of destruction and despair. He, the son of the ogre chieftain, was running like a coward in the cover of darkness. In his arms was his younger sister, a beautiful pink-haired girl. Beside him were his companions and friends. A rival with blue hair. His master with old white hair. A fellow pupil with purple hair. The village's blacksmith with a large hammer strapped to his back. They were the survivors that his father had told to flee, before the remaining ogres were forced to fall back towards the center of town. All other escape routes had been blocked. Originally, there were others that were meant to come with them, but they had stayed behind to slow down their pursuers. He could still remember their faces, despairing yet resolute, asking him to remember their sacrifice. The words of his father rang deep in his subconsciousness, as he remembered the last time he had seen his father. My son, our time has come, but yours has not. Leave this place with our most promising young warriors. But father, enough. He remembered the grip of his father's hands on his shoulders, both trembling. In fear, in anger, he did not know. Live, my son, live for our sakes, for all of us who have died for you. Your mother, your uncle, your aunt, your cousins. And eventually, me as well. Remember us on your journey, grow up, and grow strong. His father had released him and turned away, as the racket of all the fighting had started to grow closer. And louder. One day, my son, when you are strong enough, avenge us. A guttural roar sounded in the distance, and he knew, subconsciously, that the noise he heard was both the final message and final words of his clansmen. He gritted his teeth, biting hard on his lips so as to not let out a sound, tears running down his face. Blood started to seep out of his mouth, but he did not care. He would find a way to get back at all those that had wronged them. All those that had caused this calamity. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Their sacrifice for me to live, and to avenge them, just for me to run. To surrender in the face of more danger. That is unacceptable. If I cannot confront those stronger than me for the sake of my beliefs or my people, then I don't deserve this title nor this position of responsibility. If I can't defeat those that have hurt those that I loved, then what use am I? To hell with it. I will avenge my family. I refuse, Majin. I will not surrender, ever. If you want victory, you will have it once you are standing over my cold dead body. Yelled the red-haired ogre, before glaring at Rimuru. His aura increased exponentially, and despite it not even putting a dent in the aura Rimuru was currently emitting, he was not deterred. Preparing a sword stance, he put force into his legs, preparing to charge. Unbeknownst to him, Rimuru had received all the information from his memories thanks to Seal, finally understanding what had gone differently. It seems that his father's death was much more impactful than last time, which led to this drastic change in hot-headedness, stubbornness and hostility. And, just as Rimuru predicted, it was the ogre princess, who would later be known as Shuna, that stepped forward and pleaded with her brother to stop. The events that followed would be the same as before, with the group heading to Rimuru's village shortly after. A dark starry night sky above, lit only by the small flickering fires of a certain goblin village. The sound of celebration echoed through the forest, overlapping. The chirping of crickets and the soft howl of the wind. A large number of hobgoblins were celebrating and cheering, as their master had just praised the cooked kebabs that their chef had created. Nearby, a pair of ogres, with white and red hair respectively, sat on a tarp, alongside Rigurd and Kaijin. By the serious looks on their faces, it was clear that they were in the midst of an important conversation. I can't believe that orcs actually attacked ogres, muttered Kaijin, making sure that only those sitting beside him could hear. This was done to prevent dampening the party atmosphere. Ogres are much stronger than orcs, so it's extremely unlikely that they would go against a stronger foe unless they are desperate. True, it is quite unexpected that they would do such a thing, continued Rigurd. Regardless, they certainly did attack us. The red-haired ogre spoke, his tone turning somber as he remembered that fateful night. In the middle of the night, the orc army attempted to catch us off guard. They had weapons similar to that of humans, wearing suits of armor. Their numbers overwhelmed us. If it weren't for my father's foresight and the bravery of our warriors, I truly believe that none of us would have survived. Those despicable pigs. If what you say is true, then perhaps other nations are involved. Possibly even demon lords, called out another voice. The group turned to find Rimuru leaning against a tree. He was wearing a loose black button-up shirt, paired with beige pants. Not too far away, the blue-haired ogre flinched, surprised that the Majin that they had met had managed to avoid his perception. Rimuru then eyed the red-haired ogre, beckoning him to continue. I don't know if demon lords are involved, but I know for sure that Majin are. When the battle of our village was still chaotic, before my father organized their final stand, I witnessed a masked Majin knocking down some of our comrades, alongside what appeared to be their general. Rolling around like a wheel, and moving at speeds that I could not track. It was powerful, extremely so. Rimuru let out a sigh. I am assuming that you guys thought I was related to that masked Majin, hence the attack on me and my subordinates. Though I do appreciate that you guys were truly trying to do good and did not cause casualties, try to think things through before attacking in a rage. Also, don't let your desire for vengeance guide you to oblivion. To Rimuru, it seemed like a simple warning, control your anger and do not let it cloud your judgment. However, the message was different to the young ogre. Remembering the final words his father had imparted on him, as well as being already blinded by vengeance and anger, he took the advice the wrong way. After all, who was this Majin that believed that he knew what was right and wrong? It wasn't as if he had gone through similar circumstances. Grateful for the Majin's help, yet insulted by his words, the red-haired ogre let out a long sigh, before speaking. I must thank you for your mercy as well as your kindness, but, do not speak of things you would not understand. Rigurd and Rigyur, both of whom respected Rimuru a great deal, immediately felt insulted. What is that supposed to mean? Asked Rigurd in a menacing tone. The red-haired ogre glared at them. As far as you are all concerned, you know nothing but relative peace. You would not understand the desire for vengeance, nor the pain of the loss of our loved ones. Do not attempt to dissuade us from our path of bloodshed. Story continues below. A silence ensued. Young master, if I may a euro, started the white-haired ogre, before he was quickly interrupted by another voice. It was soft, but full of unconcealed anger and rage. What makes you think that I have not gone through similar circumstances? Asked Rimuru. Excuse me a euro. The red-haired ogre immediately shut his mouth in fear, as he looked at the Majin in front of him. Still leaning against the very same tree, with his arms still folded across his chest. The only difference was his tone of voice, and the hard, freezing and oppressive glare that he was giving him. Another silence ensued, as Kaijin, Rigyur and Rigurd looked on in shock. Their master had never talked about what he went through before they had met him, nor had they asked. Furthermore, the oppressive glare was rooting all of them in place, as if someone had put their hands on their shoulders and forcibly pushed them down. All of this was done, without even a minuscule amount of actual aura. The blue-haired ogre nearby straightened himself instinctively, while also pulling out a knife in case things went south. Rimuru then spoke out, clearly angered. Do not make assumptions about others. I understand you are mourning and want vengeance, but as I said before, do not let your anger control you. Perhaps you may be suspicious as to why I decided to help you, so I will make it clear to you, if you cannot take my kindness at face value. Rimuru then pushed off the tree, before standing straight, looking down on the three ogres. The true reason was because you guys reminded me of both myself and the people that I failed to protect. Sure, I may not have a right to patronize you as I am now, but you can at least heed the advice of someone who was unsuccessful in order to improve yourselves, right? Do you know your next move? Where do you plan to retreat to if things go south? Where is your base of operations? How are you going to beat the orcs, when you are outnumbered nearly 35,000 to 1? The ogres had no answer. My advice to you is never to cease your desire for vengeance, but instead to use it wisely while looking at things rationally. The red-haired ogre looked both fearful and embarrassed. He immediately looked away. The white-haired one, on the other hand, noticed a precise piece of information that could not be ignored. You said that we are outnumbered nearly 35,000 to 1. How do you know the odds? Rimuru looked away. To the untrained eye, it looked as if he was simply trying to calm himself down after his outburst. In reality, he was mentally slapping himself for letting his anger control him and saying something he shouldn't have. I'm being a big hypocrite right now, again. He then answered the question. Analysis magic goes a long way. From what I can tell, the orcs number roughly 200,000. The three ogres that heard the odds shivered, knowing full well that they could barely take on 1,000 orcs, much less 200 times that amount. They were also impressed that Rimuru was already planning ahead. You intend to fight the orcs? Asked the old white-haired ogre. Honestly, with their numbers, we are bound to be involved no matter what. Which is why I want to give you guys an offer. An offer? Prompted the red-haired ogre. You guys can work under me temporarily, as we join forces to deal with the orcs. After that, you guys can do whatever you guys want. Story continues below. You would offer this, even after I insulted you? Yes, because it ensures the best chance of survival for my people, as well as yours. Now, if you will excuse me a euro, Rimuru then turned around and walked away, but not before saying some final words. Take your time to decide. Even if you refuse, you can still stay here to recuperate and coordinate with us in battle. Once Rimuru was out of sight, the red-haired ogre also stood up. He watched from afar as two of his companions, one with pink hair and another with purple hair, interacted with the goblinas and hobgoblins. Their expressions were filled with both excitement and happiness, despite what they had just gone through. My people. Walking into the woods, his eyes met with his blue-haired rival. A silent message was sent between them, before he continued to walk forwards into the forest. They would follow him in his decision, regardless of what it may be. The red-haired ogre stood still in deep thought, before suddenly punching a nearby tree, causing long cracks to form throughout the trunk. I am weak, I am pathetic, and I will not be able to avenge you, father. Not alone, at the very least. Perhaps I was never supposed to. His thoughts then went to the Majin and his words of advice. Letting my anger and rage control me, that is definitely one of my flaws. Even my father cautioned me against this. To think that he went through similar pain. I am a fool. His pride fighting against his conscience, he grimaced, before leaning against another tree. He then closed his eyes, making a decision that would change the fate of his remaining comrades. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Not too far away, a certain platinum blue-haired demon lord sat at the base of a tree, his hand held against his forehead. An unreadable expression on his face, his eyebrows twitched every so often, clearly in deep thought. What am I doing? He thought. I lost my temper again. Rimuru felt extremely bad for his future subordinate. It was true that future Benimaru was being a bit of a dick, and also letting his emotions guide him, but Rimuru believed that he didn't have to be that direct and rude. Again with the hypocrisy, first manipulating others when I preach to help them, then telling them to not lose themselves in their emotions when I do the exact same thing. Master. Seal interrupted his self-deprecating line of thought. Everything will be fine in the end. I'm not perfect, Seal. I made so many mistakes. But you recognize these errors and hypocrisy. It's not as if you are blind to them, nor do you make these decisions willingly. Mistakes have been made, and you always move past them, towards a better future. I guess, answered Rimuru, clearly not taking all of what Seal said to heart. He then continued, talking to himself so that Seal could not hear him. But at the end of the day, you always say that I am right. Why? Because I genuinely don't know if what I am doing is right. Seal, on her part, still did not fully understand the emotions running through Rimuru at the moment, nor did she understand why he was so upset. Story continues below. What is it that is truly bothering him? Thought Seal. She could clearly understand why he was grieving, and could also understand his pain of his hypocrisy. But she had already corrected him on the latter, and the former would be solved once they had saved everyone. Was he doubting his decisions? Perhaps. But time and time again, he had made the right decision, which led to success. Just one major mistake, which they were now working to fix. Unbeknownst to her, it was just this trust, admiration and expectation that was upsetting Rimuru. The pressure he felt was unbelievable, and he felt that his mistakes were forgiven and his decisions were not doubted simply because he was him. Because he was their master, and that they would revere him and follow him, because he was their leader. Their God. And it just didn't make sense to him. Yes, he saved them, but that didn't mean that they should never doubt his decisions. And who said anything about being a god? Rimuru truly believed that he was not fit for worship. At the very least, not in his current state. Both in thought, there was a short lull in their mental conversation, before Seal started it up once more. Master, despite your worries, the timeline is on track. We can deal with the issues that come up together. Yes, Buddha Euro, Master, please try to doubt yourself less. The decisions you make aren't bad ones, in my point of view. How do you know? Asked Rimuru, in a begging tone. Just look in front of you, Master, answered Seal, with a decisive tone. Just ahead, slowly approaching them, was Shizu. She wore a loose-fitting white button-up shirt, and black pants with multiple pockets, both given to her by the goblines. In each hand she held 4 meat kebabs, and 2 were stuffed in her mouth. A bit of grease and grime were on her lips and cheeks, which she was unaware of. I do not believe that saving Shizu was a mistake, stated Seal, firmly. Meanwhile, Shizu's eyes met Rimuru's. Noticing that Rimuru was looking at her, she immediately finished the 2 kebabs that were in her mouth, before tucking the sticks into one of the many pockets that she now had in her pants. She then arrived before quietly sitting down to his left, before handing him the 4 kebabs that were in her right hand. Are you sure you want to give me these, Shizu? You seem to be enjoying them, said Rimuru. Once his part was said, he then immediately pointed to his own face. You also have a lot of grease on you. He then indicated where each blotch of grease was found. Shizu blushed slightly, before insisting that he take the kebabs she offered. When Rimuru refused, she insisted again. How else am I supposed to get rid of the grease when my hands are full? She asked. You could always just stuff it into your mouth, answered Rimuru, before the kebabs were rudely stuffed into his mouth. He then gagged, even if he didn't need to breathe. I am not a glutton, said Shizu, each word pronounced heavily at the beginning. She then took out a napkin, before wiping her mouth and face, looking away from him and pouting. Rimuru turned to face her. Sorry about that, he said, with a sheepish smile. He then caught Shizu taking another bite out of one of the kebabs. But I can tell you like to eat them. Yes I do. The pair now sat in comfortable silence, both with a satisfied smile on their faces. Their food finished, they sat side by side, each enjoying the other's presence. As the minutes went by, Rimuru's face slowly turned from a tranquil one to a contemplative one, as he continued to reflect upon his actions. However, the change did not go unnoticed by his companion, Shizu. She immediately noticed the difference, and her concern caused her to probe for the cause of the issue. Is there anything wrong, Rimuru-san? She asked him, turning to face him again. Rimuru glanced at her, before looking away. In Shizu's eyes, it was confirmation. What gave it away? He asked, still looking towards the horizon. Well, you always have this far away look whenever something seems to be bothering you. It became more obvious once you got your human form. Rimuru sighed. He seemed to be doing that a lot. Shizu then continued. I noticed that you were sitting alone and brooding, instead of having fun with the others. Rimuru scoffed at this, but said nothing as Shizu continued on. I know you are going through a lot, and... She placed her right hand on his left leg, before looking at his slightly taller figure, making sure to make eye contact. I just wanted to let you know that I am here, if you want to tell me anything. Or if you just need someone to make you feel better. Rimuru's eyes widened for a second, before he let out a pained smile. He didn't want others to be burdened by his thoughts, but at the same time wanted others he cared about to get them to hand their burden to him. Knowing that Shizu would call him out for this, he simply nodded, and said a few more words. Thank you, Shizu. As she leaned against him, he slowly felt himself relax, and the words that Seal had last spoken to him rang in his head. And he agreed with them. He did not know if what he was doing was right. But at the very least, he could agree with Seal that saving Shizu was not a mistake. Shortly after, Rimuru felt two astral arms wrap around his neck from behind, and an astral chin put itself on his left shoulder. He felt heat emitting off of the astral body of Seal, visible to him and only him alone. I will always be here for you, Master. For as long as you need me. Thank you, Seal. Allowing himself to indulge in a moment of peace, Rimuru let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Reveling in the warmth of the two leaning against him, he closed his eyes, wishing that the moment could last forever. Well, forever would be a stretch. Perhaps just a long time. Waking up the next morning, Shizu Izawa slowly opened her mouth and yawned, while stretching her arms behind her. She looked around her, only to find herself back in her tent, with the blankets in disarray. However, she could tell that prior to her waking up, she had been tightly tucked into bed, and she could only think of one person who would have done all of that to ensure her comfort. Slightly blushing at the thought, she immediately began to question why she felt this way. Yes, he had saved her, and had also promised to save her students. Students whom you no longer have the right to guide or teach. A small yet nagging voice in her head said. She immediately shook her head, ignoring such thoughts. What mattered was the present, and what she planned to do currently. Remembering the offer that she had made to Rimuru the previous night, she came to a realization. No, she already knew why she had offered him help, and was simply putting it into words for the first time. She wanted to repay him, and also accompany him. If you can't live for yourself, then, can you live for the children? For me, she remembered the words Rimuru had spoken, the day he had saved her. Yes, despite her grief and regrets, she would live for others' sake. And because others wanted her to live. But, just what kind of life did she want to live? Yes, a life dedicated to others, but, what exactly would that life entail? If you choose to fuse with Kojin, you could get his powers instead, but that is up to you. If you want to live as a human, that's fine too. Again, the words Rimuru had spoken had made their way to the forefront of her mind. And they made sense, in a way. He gave her a choice, so what could she do? Couldn't she be more selfish in this life? Did she deserve to be? She had no answers to the questions that had arisen in her mind. Originally, her answer would have been no, that she did not deserve to be selfish. But after her conversations with Rimuru, she no longer knew. I don't know what life I want to live now. But I do know that I want to stay by Rimuru-san's side. I also want to help him, and repay him for how he has helped me. She then thought of the despondent face he had when he thought that nobody was looking, and the face full of anger when he was insulted. All indicating intense grief and sorrow. And perhaps I could try to save him as well, just like how he saved me. Asterisk 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 Rimuru was currently sitting down on his bed in human form, observing the ogres that had arrived in his tent. Above his bed were two curtains made of red fabric, indicating his special status as the chief of the village. And much more, albeit most of his current companions were unaware of this. Have you decided? Rimuru prompted. Yes, I have, answered the red-haired ogre. But first, I would like to apologize for my words last night. Don't worry about it. Anger blinds the best of us, and anger-controlled actions do not define us, said Rimuru. As for your answer, in response to Rimuru's prompting, the red-haired ogre lowered his head, before then kneeling as well. The action was repeated by his companions. As a representative of the ogre clan, we accept your offer. As such, we hereby declare our temporary allegiance to Majin Rimuru Tempest. Majin, it's been a long time since I was only called a Majin. Story continues below. A smile made its way onto Rimuru's face. A face of both nostalgia and happiness, unseen by the ogres who were currently kneeling and facing the ground. Rise. As proof of your temporary contract with me, I shall grant you names. As the ogres rose, one could see the obvious surprise and shock on their faces. It goes without saying that Rimuru was already breaking their current common sense. A Majin giving names willy-nilly, even to those that were only temporarily serving him. Absurd. Yet here he was. Are you serious? Asked the purple-haired ogre. She, alongside the pink-haired and black-haired one, were the only ogres that had not felt Rimuru's oppressive aura at the time. Will you be alright? Continued the pink-haired one, only for Rimuru to simply nod. I'll be fine, my strength is more than enough to name you all. In response to his declaration, the red-haired ogre asked another question. Why? He was confused. Despite the earlier conflict, and despite his rudeness, this Majin was willing to sacrifice his strength for them. He just couldn't comprehend why this Majin would do such a thing. Rimuru's answer stunned them. Isn't it obvious? To make you all stronger. Silence greeted him. Would you guys rather pass? Continued Rimuru. It's not like the names will enforce the contract even after we deal with our enemies. After a few more moments of silence. We accept. An answer from the red-haired one. Rimuru smiled again. Soon, several of his most trusted subordinates would be back. Very well, your names shall be. Asterisk 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 Benimaru, now a Kijin, leaned against a nearby tree, collecting his thoughts. He, alongside his companions, had been granted names by their temporary master. Yet that was not what was truly bothering him. He blamed it on a mild headache and stress, telling his fellow Kijin that he would be fine, but in truth, he was slightly shaken. After all, he felt as though he was always by their lord's side. A feeling of utmost loyalty and allegiance. Camaraderie as well, yet this was all impossible. He never had encountered this Majin before, and it was the first name that he had ever received. Despite the facts in front of him, he felt as though the name Benimaru had always been his identity. He did not know if the others felt the same way. They had all separated to do different tasks, as if it were natural. The two female companions, now known as Shuna and Xian, were currently competing in a cooking contest, and were planning on getting their lord to be the judge. His blue-haired rival, now named Soe, was training in the woods and adjusting to his new strength. He had also sent clones out into the woods, acting as the village's new intelligence network. Their blacksmith, now called Kurobe, was currently hammering away in a nearby hut, made on the fly to suit his needs. He was also talking with the dwarves and their hobgoblin apprentices. As for his master, Hikuro, well, he was currently beating a goblin known as Gobta to the ground. Training, along with another very strict teacher. A human by the name of Shizu Izawa. Her flame proficiency was even greater than his, but her magical count was quite low for someone of her level. A nearby scream interrupted his thoughts. It seems like the old man and the woman were having fun. Not like Hikuro would ever catch him calling him an old man. He wasn't that stupid, the man was a literal devil when you talked about his age. And the woman was just as scary as well. Especially when it came to their new lord Rimuru. She would just stare you down like you were a child that did something wrong, and it was up to you to figure out what you did wrong and how you were going to apologize. He sighed. This wasn't the time to get distracted. He didn't know why he felt this way. In fact, why did the name Charybdis keep popping up in his mind? Western Saints, Hinata Sakaguchi, perhaps a vision of things to come. Unbeknownst to both him as well as his master Rimuru, Seal had been pulling her own strings. After all, naming another monster and forming a connection allow for magicals to be transferred, strengthening the subordinate monster and sometimes weakening the master. She just made it so that they would also receive visions the longer they stayed with her master. It would ensure their loyalty in the far future, and once Rimuru told them the truth, if he told them, then they would be able to make sense of these words. It would not affect the grand scheme of things, it would just eliminate the possibility that Rimuru's subordinates would betray or leave him this time. And if they still did, well, she would ensure that they would suffer, even if they were comrades in another life. To be continued.